If we accept politicians' claims that Britain is broken, there's something we need to add. Britain isn't broken by accident. I'm Mike Sivier of Vox Political. For decades, successive governments have sold off the very things that made public life affordable, efficient and fair. Council housing, public transport, energy, water, even public land. These weren't gifts, they were bad deals. Knocked down prices for essential national infrastructure handed over to private buyers with little regard for the long-term consequences. And now, with investment and productivity at historic lows, we're told it's a mystery that our living standards have stagnated. It's not a mystery. Economist Ren Lewis just published an article stating that UK productivity has declined further and more persistently than in other advanced economies since 2005. One reason, he says, is a sharp fall in investment. Productivity, the value created per hour of work, depends heavily on investment in things like transport, digital infrastructure, housing, research and energy. When investment slows, so does wage growth, job quality and economic resilience. You with me? Investment in Britain, more properly in the UK, has slowed badly. Ren Lewis notes that in the 1980s and 90s, UK productivity kept pace with Germany, France and the US, but from the mid-2000s onward, we began to fall behind. Austerity in the 2010s delayed economic recovery from the 2008 crash. Brexit in 2016 made investment riskier and less attractive. And through it all, one trend continued, the steady loss of public ownership and long-term planning. Here's where economist Gary Stevenson adds the missing piece. While public investment fell, private wealth skyrocketed. This means that as public assets were sold off, the rich bought them up and profited handsomely. Stevenson argues that the UK has become a country where the richest extract rent from everyone else. It has become the zombie economy about which I and others warned in the 2010s. The rich own the houses, the trains, the utilities and the debt, and they get richer even as the economy stagnates because ownership itself generates wealth. The rest of us work to service our debts to them. What this means is simple. The UK doesn't just have a growth problem or a productivity problem, it has a structural ownership problem. And until we deal with that, investment will remain weak and living standards will remain flat. To invest properly in Britain's future, we need more than just spending. We need to take control of what we invest in and who owns the outcomes. That means rebuilding public ownership of essential infrastructure, transport, energy, water, broadband, ending the fire sale model of privatisation, where assets are sold without regard for public benefit. Creating new publicly owned institutions capable of long-term investment in green energy, industry, housing and care, taxing unearned wealth and land values to fund new investment fairly. Labour says it wants to invest for growth. Well, it's a start, but if it leaves the fundamentals untouched, if the railways remain in private hands, if energy remains dominated by profiteers, if housing policy continues to enrich landlords rather than build homes, then the pattern will repeat. Public money will continue to be poured into private profits. Living standards will stay stuck, and the cycle of low investment will roll on. The UK has been disinvested. That is not because we couldn't afford to invest, but because we were told that selling everything off was clever economics. It wasn't. It was national vandalism. And fixing it means not just investing again, but reclaiming control of the wealth of this country. When the public owns the assets, the public shares the gains. Until that happens, we'll just keep paying top dollar, renting everything we used to own. In a moment, I'll explain what Rachel Reeves can do about it. But first, buy me a coffee if you think I deserve it. That means donate vital funds so I can keep going, or donate more than £20 and I'll give you a free book. More on that later. Subscribe to the video mailing list, like and comment on this clip, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And now, back to our scheduled programme. The UK hasn't ended up in a state of low investment and stagnant living standards by accident. This has been decades in the making, a deliberate dismantling of the public assets and institutions that once underpinned a fair and functioning economy. Now, we are seeing the consequences play out in real time. The National Institute for Economic and Social Research, I like to call it NICER, has warned that Chancellor Rachel Reeves will fail to meet her own self-imposed borrowing rules by more than £41 billion unless she raises taxes this autumn. It's being framed as a trilemma. Reeves promised not to raise taxes on working people. She also pledged to stick to strict borrowing limits. And she committed to investing in public services and growth. She can't do all three. But here's the question nobody in government seems to be asking. Why doesn't she have the money? The answer, as I pointed out, is simple. Because successive governments sold off the means of generating it. Asset strippers have been plundering the UK for parts over a period of decades. Council housing, water, energy, public transport, broadband, Royal Mail, land, all have been sold off. And what did we get in return? One-off windfalls, falling service quality, rising bills, and a state that now has to rent back the infrastructure it once owned at top dollar prices. It was sold as efficiency. In reality, it was a bonanza for the wealthy and a disaster for long-term investment. Now Reeves is in charge of the nation's finances, but the UK doesn't own the tools of economic recovery anymore. And that's the point. Raising taxes becomes the only lever left when you've sold off those that used to generate income. Ren Lewis has shown that UK productivity began falling behind other advanced economies from the mid-2000s onward due to a sharp drop in investment. Investment drives productivity, productivity drives wage growth and living standards. Public investment collapsed, first under austerity, then under the ongoing sell-off of state assets. Meanwhile, private wealth soared. The rich bought what was sold and now extract rent from everyone else for using those things. It's what I've called a zombie economy, one where the people work solely to pay off debts to wealthy parasites. We're not underperforming, we're being bled dry. NICER suggests Reeves should raise taxes. Council tax reform, freezing income tax thresholds, changes to VAT and pensions, all technically feasible, all politically painful, but none of them fix the underlying problem. You can't rebuild public services with a tax base that's been deliberately narrowed for decades. You can't invest your way out of stagnation when the profits of that investment flow straight to shareholders and not back into the public realm. And you can't pretend Labour's pro-growth strategy will work while the country remains owned by a class of rentiers who profit from public need. This is what I meant earlier when I said the UK has a structural ownership problem. Reeves is walking into a budget that even insiders are calling the most significant of this Parliament. But if she wants to get out of this trap, she can't just tweak tax policy. She has to name the real problem. The UK doesn't just need to spend more, it needs to own more. That means ending the fire sale model. It means rebuilding public ownership. It means creating new institutions for long-term investment. And it means taxing unearned wealth and land values, not just squeezing workers to service a system they didn't break. If the UK is trapped in a cycle where wealth extraction outpaces growth, the answer isn't just more taxes on income or consumption. It's about taxing unearned wealth, the profits that come from ownership itself. Gary Stevenson has proposed a wealth tax, a step towards addressing inequality by taxing accumulated fortunes. Critics, often the very wealthy, say wealth taxes won't work, what a surprise, with valuation challenges and loopholes. But as I've written before, we already have tools that can capture profits from wealth without stifling investment or growth. Taxing the returns from assets, cracking down on loopholes, and using the proceeds to fund public investment. That's why Vox Political has proposed a sharper, more practical alternative, a tax on the profits generated by that wealth, the unearned income, rents, and gains that come from owning property, land, shares, and other assets. By targeting these profits, not just the value of assets, we can halt the ongoing extraction of wealth from working people, reduce incentives for speculative ownership and asset inflation, generate sustainable revenue to invest in public services and infrastructure, avoid technical problems linked to taxing asset values directly. This is how you rebuild an economy that works for everyone, by making sure those who profit from the country's wealth contribute their fair share to its future. Rachel Reeves may be facing a black hole in the public finances today, but the real question is whether Labour will be brave enough to fix the structural problem behind it. I've been Mike Sivier, and it's time to buy me that coffee now. And it still means donating cash to the cause. Donate more than £20 and I'll give you a free copy of my reissued first book, Strong Words in Hard Times, new book coming soon. Subscribe to the video mailing list, like and comment on this video clip, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do all that, you'll be helping keep this channel alive, and then you'll be able to see me, as ever, in the next one.